Good afternoon, everyone. Again, this is Queenie Clem with Author Showcase Book Fair Tour. And today, right now, I have T.H. Moore. Welcome, 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 and take it away.
Well, thank you for, number one, having me on the show. I really appreciate it. We've been building up the anticipation for this coming up, for the past week. I've been doing a lot of posts on social media, so I'm glad that we're finally here, right? So
Yes.
just want to introduce myself. I'm T.H. Moore. I'm the author of 3 books. I started writing fiction. I was about 3 years. I'm sorry, not 3 years. 15 years ago. My first book is called "The End Justifies the Means." Okay,
Oh, this
there
way.
we go.
Yeah.
And it's an urban suspense novel based out of Camden, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. So basically, like the story is like for all you readers who are familiar with "The Coldest Winter Ever" by Sister Soldier. If you like that story, you'll like "The End Justifies the Means." If you like the TV show on HBO called "The Wire," then you'll like "The End Justifies the Means" because it's the same type of genre and the same type of audience. My second book that I wrote about 2.5 years ago is called "The Devil's Whisper."
Mhm.
Be afraid of the cover. It's not, Stephen fiction. I mean, it's not like Stephen Kingish. It's not horror. It's basically a story that I created where I removed all the major crimes against humanity. So in The Devil's Whisper, there was no transatlantic slave trade. There was no World War I and II. There was no Holocaust. So basically, I created a world where we had global world peace, but there's still a minority of criminals who wanted to rebel against this utopia. So in the story, I had society exile people like that to a prison city in Australia. And that's where the story starts, following these 2 exiled criminals and what they have to do to survive in that type of environment. And then that brings us to my third book that I just released December of 2019, so roughly about 7, 8 months ago.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's called "I Am." And if you notice, that's also the background that I'm using and also the t-shirt that I'm wearing. And in "I Am," in that story, it follows a young, successful African-American couple, a police sergeant by the name of Xavier and a trauma surgeon, his wife, that's named Sandy, who are basically forced to pick up the pieces of their marriage after a violent loss of their young godson at the hands of local policemen. So essentially, the couple's tragic loss sparks not only their anger, but also their community's anger, and also inspires the rage of a vigilante, where a nationwide killing spree ensues, where this vigilante is targeting corrupt police officers that beginning in Texas and spreads to our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And the reason why I wrote this story roughly about a year and a half ago, I wanted to instigate an unsettling conversation in America because, as you can see, based off of our events over the past, I would say the last 1 to 2 months,
Mhm.
um, America has willfully ignored the existence of the ingrained cultural bias in our law enforcement system. And that's basically going to, or I believed at the time when I was writing it a year and a half ago, that it would spawn a cultural reckoning on the verge of eruption. And the consequences of us continuing to deny it would be the equivalent of a seaboard state ignoring the fury of a hurricane barreling towards its shore. So simply stated, I wrote "I Am" as a literary warning to America. And it's kind of weird that over the past few months, this literary warning has actually, come to fruition. When I was writing the story, I honestly didn't think it would happen until, maybe years later, if the current administration was reelected. But unfortunately, it was a lot worse than I actually thought it was. So now we're seeing like the uprisings, in all the major cities across the U.S., and all the other fallout. But on the positive side, we're also seeing that now America is willing to have that unsettling conversation and acknowledge that there is some cultural and systemic racism that's not only affecting our law enforcement, but also affecting other parts of our daily lives, like education and employment, literally every point, every part of American society. So it was one of those things where I felt that I had to get this story off my chest because I saw the direction and the trajectory of the country, and it headed toward a wicked trajectory. And I wanted to do what I could do outside of, volunteering in my community and, volunteering to register people to vote. I wanted to artistically say, hey, America, in case you're not aware, when I say we, I'm talking about like the brown and black communities in this country. Like, look, we're getting to a point where we're getting sick of, being victimized. And we're going to get to a point where we're ultimately going to draw our line in the sand and fight back. So that's what you're seeing right now. So I wanted to instigate this conversation so it didn't have to get that far. But unfortunately, like I stated before, we're a lot far along in that anger than I realized.
Okay, and tell us where we can find your books. And for today, what your books cost, if it's either paperback or ebooks.
Okay, well, first, the best place to go would be to my website, thmore.com. So that's T as in Tom, H as in Harry, M as in Mary, OORE.com. There you'll find links to Amazon.com, where you'll find paperback, hardcover. You'll find audiobooks for people who don't have time to read, but you're driving in your car and you rather have someone read the book to you. If you're not into turning pages and you rather have a Kindle digital version, I have that available on Amazon.com as well. I also have all three of my books on BarnesandNobles.com. If you go to Books A Million, like all the normal portals that you will find literature, you'll find, The End Justifies the Means, you'll find The Devil's Whisper, and you'll find my latest book about police brutality, I Am. So those are the best places to get it. Amazon has everything, and I have every option for you. So you don't have an excuse. If you like to read, I got books. If you want someone to read to you, I got an audiobook, and I got Kindle.
Okay, can you show us?
Sorry.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Can you show us your book covers one more time, please?
Absolutely. So the first book, The End Justifies the Means, the red and white cover right there. Then my second book, which is also the first of a trilogy, so I have two more stories coming after this, is The Devil's Whisper. And then my third book that I just released about police brutality, that I'm wearing a t-shirt and the background right there. Okay, you'll see. Oh, and another thing, if you're interested in buying a t-shirt of I Am, I have those, and I also have hoodies when it gets warm, when it gets cold outside. And on the back of the t-shirts and on the back of the hoodie is an acronym that I created that basically says resist. Yes. And it gives the explanation of what each letter in resist stands for. And I have those available on my website. That will take you over to my Etsy store, the TH Moore store. And that's it. If you go to thmore.com, you'll find everything you need.
Okay, one question. What would you want the readers to take away from your when they read your books?
All three stories have their own unique message. For the first book, the end justifies the means. It does not like red and white. That story, again, like it's an urban suspense novel based out of Philadelphia and Camden, New Jersey. And it follows two cousins who grew up in the city. And it shows the choices that they make and how those choices affect their lives. So one cousin, he's, clean cut. He goes to school, does whatever he's supposed to do. And he has other cousin who's significantly older than him and is also more of a father figure for him. And he makes other choices that takes them in the opposite direction towards crime and things of that nature. So the story follows the choices that they make, how those choices affect their lives. But they're also family, so they need one another to get through certain trials and tribulations. So the story is about choices, how those choices affect our lives, and the importance of family. So The Devil's Whisper, I wanted to create a unique story, like a story I've never read before, or I've never watched a movie similar to it before. But it's more Hunger Game-ish, especially like with it being a trilogy. But the story, the message in the story is about how we could potentially reach a place of global world peace, but realistically. And I also like took little snippets from history to create this world, because I had to essentially rewrite world history in order to create this kumbaya global world peace. So when we get to the point where we're talking about World Wars I and II, I had to research, how World War I and II started, how the Holocaust started, how the transatlantic slave trade started. So the message in that story is about how we actually can achieve heaven here on earth without having to die if we decide that we want to treat one another well, but also seeing the consequences of when we don't embrace that philosophy and we have all these criminals who want to rebel against living righteously. And what basically what the consequences of that, of those choices are. And my third book is, it's pretty self-explanatory. About 2 years ago, like if you remember, we were seeing like almost every week we were seeing an unarmed American citizen being murdered by police. And I chose that word murder purposely because that's essentially what's happening. And it was making me angry. And like being honest, I've been pretty fortunate in my life. I have a good career, I have a good family. And I asked myself, if it's making me angry, I can only imagine how other people are feeling who are not as fortunate as I am. So again, it was like a thing where I had to put pen to paper in order to kind of give America this literary warning that, you're kind of pushing people to the brink. And we're not a generation where we're saying, hey, we're going to take this line down, or we're going to turn the other cheek, or we're going to forgive our aggressor. No, we're more confrontational. If you put your hands on me, I'm going to put my hands on you. If you try to threaten my life, I'm going to defend myself up to and including, taking your life if that's what it takes. So again, it was a literary warning to America that we're headed in a wicked trajectory. And unless you change course, as you saw, a month ago, over like 30 American cities were burning. So that's the direction that we're heading if we don't get this right, especially with the election coming up later on in November. If America doesn't decide to draw their line in the sand and say, we're going to vote and pick our candidates in line with righteousness, and treating our fellow human beings the way that we want to be treated, if you want to pull from the Bible and the golden rule, there's going to be dire consequences. Just like an example that I gave, it's going to be equivalent to Florida or Louisiana ignoring a Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane headed towards itself. So these are the choices that we're going to have to make in the next few months. So that's the reason why I wrote the story. Unfortunately, it's coming to fruition a whole lot sooner than I anticipated, but it was a change and it was a reckoning that needed to happen.
All right. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it, TH.
Thank you for having me.
All right. See y'all in the next 30 minutes. Bye.
thmore.com.